So here we have with us the team from the film The Captive. Hello, Atom. Welcome to you. Welcome to your crew. Welcome, Mireille, Enos, Rosario, Dawson, and Ryan Reynolds. Thank you very much for being with us here in Cannes to show this film in competition. Atom, where did you get the desire to recount this poignant thriller talking about a kidnapping of a child and paedophiles?
In the town that I was raised with on the west coast of Canada, there was a child that went missing one day, disappeared into a park. The mother wasn't looking for a second, and he was gone. And every time I go back, I see posters for this child, and I know that the parents are still believing that he's going to come back. And that just haunted me. That story haunted me, and this idea of how people live with that, and this notion of hope and what might have happened to this child, and the imagination and the fantasy. And so it felt like a very strong place to position a story, and to look at how we react to loss and how we need hope.
Right.
Indeed, the reaction of Ryan and Mireille to this loss, it's something impossible to cope with. You are suffering constantly. It's impossible to construct yourself when you're in such a situation as a parent. Ryan and Mireille, how did you prepare your roles? Ryan?
For me, I found it really interesting, Adam's script, the way the relationships unravel because of this tragedy that happens to these people. I found it interesting how that intersection between, hope and a marriage, and how that can, in some essence, break that apart. I thought that was very interesting, how these people have developed these adaptive or maladaptive coping mechanisms to deal with this loss, this profound loss, especially in light of the fact that there have never been answers for these people. And for me, I was just attracted to how that affects the relationship between our characters.
Mireille.
I have a little daughter myself, so it wasn't too far to imagine. And it seemed like a really interesting exercise. We talk about the stages of grief, but to imagine the stages of powerlessness and all of the different places that takes someone when they have no control.
It's impossible for the couple to continue to live together. Is that the way you see things, Atom?
They love each other, but I think she lives, Mireille's character, in this eternal present. I mean, it just happened all the time. And I think the film is also a study about how people can torture each other, even if they love each other. There's 3 couples in the film, and they all have a very complex relationship, but it involves a degree of either conscious or unconscious torturing. And yet, these people are bound. And Ryan feels this incredible weight because he made a very simple parental mistake. People leave their children alone all the time, but he's being continually punished for this, and he punishes himself. And yet, the love between the two of them is a constant in the film, even though they can't live together.
Ils se sentent tous coupables.
They all feel guilty. Everybody feels guilty. Does your character, Rosario, carry some kind of guilt? Because she deals with all these children. They come in and tell terrible stories after kidnapping. How does your character survive?
I think it must be really difficult for anyone who does this work to survive it. It's just, from the research into the characters and the people who do this work, they have to move it up. They have to shake it up, because it's just, you can be destroyed everywhere they go. It's never like they turn off. It's not a job that you ever leave. When they're at the park, when they're with their family, they're always looking at kids' faces to see, is this a child that I have in my memory bank that I'm looking for? And is that girl maybe an older version of the girl that I'm looking for? It's just a constant thing. And that level of stress, I think, was really interesting to think about. Someone who is not related and not married, not personally involved with this couple, but how intimate she gets and how close she gets to it, because she has to put herself in their position all the time. And that's just got to be so, there's so little reward. There's a whole speech she does in it where she talks about that. There's no happy endings to what she does. There's millions upon millions of these sites that exist where these types of pictures are being shown, and there's not enough cops. There's just not enough police force. There's just no way. And they're looking at these kids grow older in these photographs as they're trying to track someone. Just like my character, she's watching her going, I think this is an older version of that girl, Cass. And it's just like you're watching the torture gets worse, and it's just horrible for everyone involved.
Ryan Reynolds, your character does not trust the police.
No, I think, I mean, I think the track record of, when you look in the world and you see abducted children, the track record isn't good. The signs aren't good. So, the character's driven by hope, and I think that hope is ultimately self-propelled. It's not invested in what the police find or what they uncover or how they feel or what their opinion is. And to some degree, my character is a suspect early on, and that, for a guy who's grappling with that kind of guilt and who's carrying around that little bag of rocks with him every day is a very mercurial kind of thing to happen. So he's a guy who's a live wire. He's sort of living on the edge. I don't say that in the action movie sense. I mean, he's living on the edge in the sense that he's a raw nerve.
Ce qui est étonnant dans votre film, je sais
The amazing thing in your film, I know you like video installations, I know you like new technologies, Atom, Egoyan, but the thing is that you are tracking these pedophiles on internet, but they are tracking their victims, they film their victims, the parents of the victims. Where did you get that idea from?
I think anything is possible. I think that ultimately we are a society that's consumed with watching, obviously, and for this particular culture, there must be subcultures, and those subcultures can bend and distort in any one of a number of ways. This is extreme because it's a type of reality TV nightmare, and we're not quite sure who these other observers are. Ultimately, they may be us. I mean, we're implicated as well as we watch the film, and that is a zone that always fascinates me, to create that tension with the viewer, where they're aware that they're also implicated. But it's not unrealistic. I mean, I think that the ability, once a human being is capable of that type of transgression, then the appetite probably does increase, and this just seems a particularly insidious and malicious way to extend it. Not only do they watch the suffering of the victims, but also they have the captive recount memory. And those memories are then put as voiceover over the image. So it's very elaborate and orchestrated, and we never quite know who's watching. But we know that we're watching.
C'est vrai que c'est très inquiétant.
Yes, it's very, very worrying. The landscapes, there are the cameras, the inside world, there's the suffering, but outside there's a wonderful Niagara Falls, the snowscapes. How did you select the landscape, and why this particular landscape?
Well, there's two issues. One is, of course, it's such an impressive force of nature, and this idea of the continuity of natural forces, and that threading through the film was very attractive to me. But just at a practical level, Niagara Falls is at on the border. And so there's a lot of transporting, and there's a lot of border crossing, and it's a transient community. A lot of hotels, and we know that where a lot of this happens are in hotels, and it's very dark, and yet there's something also magnificent. And Niagara Falls in the winter is also, it's a great metaphor, because the falls almost become frozen. Yeah. So you're aware of this incredible energy that's somehow stored up and is bound to be released. So it was, I've always wanted to shoot Niagara Falls, and this seemed like the right film. Honeymoon City.
Honeymoon City, tragique honeymoon, oui, effectivement.
Oui, a tragic honeymoon. Thank you, Atom, Rosario, Ryan, for coming in. The Captive in competition at the 67th Cannes Film Festival.